Do the New York Jets finally have their next general manager in place? According to Josina Anderson, they certainly do. I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. So first things first, most important part of this, not yet officially confirmed by the team. However, when insiders get stories this big, rarely do they swing and miss. And Josina Anderson is among those who she breaks these stories. You know, listen, no one gets them like Rap Sheet and Schefter. They get 90% of this stuff. But Josina Anderson is one of those folks who gets the other 10%. And she, more often than not, in my experience, Josina Anderson is correct. So we will see. Perhaps it will. I mean, Rich Cimini and others have commented on this. None of them saying, may not happen. So it just seems to be a formality. The team announcing it, making it official. Jets reportedly, not officially, have a new general manager, Darren Mougey, out of Denver with the Broncos. Hasn't worked for any other team. Has only been a Broncos employee for 12, 13, 14 years now. We'll go through his job history in Denver. Was a college player, played at San Diego State, played quarterback initially before being moved to wide receiver. Apparently he's 6'6". I saw a thing the other day saying he was 6'4". He's 6'6", according to some stuff. Regardless, who cares? Was a quarterback at San Diego State, home of Marshall Faulk. And played behind Kevin O'Connell, Broncos head coach. He was his backup. Was moved to wide receiver. Had a cup of coffee with the Atlanta Falcons and Arizona Cardinals. Decided, with his playing career not going anywhere, he wanted to get into scouting. So he did. And in 2012, he interviewed for a job with the Broncos, was hired by former Broncos great John Elway as basically an intern, a scouting intern. That was back in 2012. Then by 2013, and he rose up the ranks pretty quickly. A lot of jobs, like every year or two, he moved up, and with different regimes, which you always like to see. So he basically got the intern job in 2012, scouting intern. 2013, he was promoted to personnel and scouting assistant. The following year, he was promoted to college and pro personnel scout. The following year, he was promoted to area scout, held that job for 4 years until 2019. Then 2020, promoted to director of college scouting. That's a big one. Then just 1 year later, promoted again to director of player personnel, so college and pro. So he oversaw everything. And then finally in 2022, when GM George Patton decided he wanted to keep him on, and give him a promotion because he felt like he might get poached, he was named the assistant general manager from 2022 up until now. So look, fast riser, and I'm not gonna have any feelings too strongly one way or the other. Wild Wave, how we doing, bud? Glad you could hop in. So as I said, fans, no matter who this hire is, or no matter even if this isn't the hire, if they name somebody else, which that's not going to happen. But if it did, people just jump on the bandwagon. New GM, he's going to be great. He's going to be awesome. Everyone loves him. As I said on our show a day or two ago, or last night, to remind myself how these things go and how people respond, I hopped online yesterday and I found all the lovely, nice, flowery quotes about Mike Maccagnan when he was hired and John Idzik when he was hired, two of the worst GMs in team history. So, and look, I'm not saying this. I don't know what he's going to be. No one knows what he's going to be. Nobody, put it this way. Nobody knows what he did in Denver outside of that building, and no one knows what he's going to do with the Jets. However, people who like the hire will point out all the good acquisitions that were made while he was there. The people who don't like the hire will point out the bad acquisitions that were made while he was there. And then we'll just wait to see what he actually does as a general manager because it's something he's never done before. This is the first time since Bowles Maccagnan, this was pointed out by Rich Cimini earlier today. This is the first time since the Bowles Maccagnan era that the Jets go rookie head coach, rookie GM with Aaron Glenn, of course. Some people mentioned Joe Douglas, Mike Maccagnan, Todd Bowles. Were the last. Joe Douglas, Adam Gase, however, Um, can I flub this any more different ways? People, when Samini said McCagnon Bowles was the last time, people said, what about Joe Douglas being a first-time GM with Robert Saleh? Douglas held the job for a year, so he wasn't a rookie when Saleh came on, even though the job itself was his first as a GM. Get sorted that out now? We good? We got that? We understand where I'm coming from there? So listen, you're bringing in a guy, fast riser for a team that's doing a lot of winning right now. Huge draft class this past year, huge draft pick with Bo Nix. But there will be some good and bad from what I've seen online. Just scrolling Twitter and looking what people are saying about what he did in Denver. It would appear he was a Nate Hackett fan, which is about as big a strike as you can get. Our good friend Scott Mason pointed out that he was a bigger Kevin O'Connell fan. When Denver was looking for a coach, that's who he was endorsing. That's who got his highest praise. Mougey wanted, or Mougey, I'm not even sure. I've not heard it pronounced yet. I could be saying it wrong. But Mougey was saying that he wanted Kevin O'Connell, was his number one choice, but he was also fine with the Hackett choice. So he was overruled, which, it's important to note. And that's the type of stuff that I always talk about with these GM hires. Teams make moves. We don't know what this guy wanted. Well, in this case, it's been reported that we know what he wanted. He wanted Kevin O'Connell, which that's encouraging. Although at the same time, college roommate, that's, probably had a little bit of bias there, which is fine because it worked out, right? If they'd hired him, they would have worked out. But anyway, he was okay with Hackett, which is scary. He was there during the Russell Wilson move. If he was fine with that too, that's a little bit scary as well. The fact that you gave up as an organization as much as you did to acquire Russell Wilson, to work with an incompetent head coach. Although Wilson's been better since moving on from that head coach, but not he hasn't been anywhere near the player he was in Seattle, and I think that's what Denver thought they were getting. So Mougey and Patton and whoever was in on that decision, that was a fairly large swing and a miss. But Denver's draft classes. Let's take a look at some of the draft classes that the Broncos had ever since 2021 when Mougey took over player personnel. So again, he's not making the picks, but the higher you go up in the food chain, the more voice you have. But again, that doesn't mean he wasn't overruled many times. We just discussed the fact he was overruled on the coaching preference. Rich, how we doing? Rich is excited, and I'm gonna be calm. I've taken the bait too many times. I'm gonna wait for results before I say this is an awesome move. Let's see. Taking a look at his history. Taking a look at the Broncos draft history since he was brought on. 2021, Pat Surtain, a great pick, obviously, all-world corner. Javonte Williams, running back, good player out of North Carolina, but he's battled a lot of injuries. So, again, I always say I don't blame the GM for injuries. With the Jets' last GM, people love blaming him for the injuries. They found a talented player. He got hurt. That's beyond their control. Quinn Miners, the center who everyone fell in love with at Senior Bowl, was their third rounder. Then you had some guys who obviously didn't pan out. Baron Browning played 16 career games. Then the next the next four picks didn't really play. Caden Stearns. Okay, Caden Stearns played 21 games, but I don't know that he's. Yeah, he didn't play this. I was going to say, I don't know that he's with the Broncos anymore. He had 1 year where he really played. But again, these are day 3 guys. So it's not a huge deal, but we'll just go through the picks. And there is a home run in here in round 7. Caden Stearns, Jamar Johnson, Seth Williams, Kerry Vincent, all these guys played 2 or 3 games, and then were out of the league. Jonathan Cooper, defensive end. He's a guy who's got 23.5 sacks. He's been a steady player. He was a backup his first couple of years. Started a handful of games, but these last 2 seasons, he started every game this year and last. and picked up 19 sacks, total of 19 sacks. So there's a guy they got in the 7th round with pick 239, who is a high-end pass rusher, which is nice to see. And then Marquise Spencer, who I believe he spent some time in the Jets practice squad, but he's only played in one game. The following year, you've got Nick Bonito, who I loved out of Oklahoma. He took a year or two to develop, but he's really come on. I thought he was a swing and a miss for me because Bonito didn't do much his first year. It was year 2. He was on fire. He started one game as a rookie, 1.5 sacks, but then had 8 and then 13.5 last year. So, like I said, liked him. I also liked Greg Dulcich a lot, and he fizzled out. He had a strong, solid start to his career, not spectacular. Rookie year, he had 411 yards receiving, and since then, he doesn't even have 100 yards receiving. Was let go by the Broncos last year and latched on with the Giants. You've got Damari Mathis, the next pick in that class. He started a game this year, and he started 20? No, not 20, 18. He's got 18 starts over the course of his career. And then you've got I'm looking to see any impact guys. You've got some role players, some guys who, have played 30, 40 games, or not so much 40. 20, 30 games. Montrell Washington, the wide receiver. I don't think he's done a whole lot in terms of producing. Yes, he's gone. I was thinking he was I thought he hung around for a couple of years. So not a lot to speak of in the 2022 class. I'm sure they got a starter in there somewhere late on day 3. Luke Wattenberg, the lineman, started 13 games this year. So there are some guys that they brought in, again, day 3 guys who did play. Then 2023, you had Marvin Mims, the receiver, out of Oklahoma. He's been up and down. I thought he was going to be a much better player. He hasn't done a lot, but he has made some big plays, and he's made some big plays on specials. Drew Sanders, who I loved. This would probably, if I look through these Broncos picks, he would be the biggest bust, like if I were making the picks, because I definitely would have taken him. And he only played 4 games last year. I don't know if he was injured. I haven't looked that far into it, but played 17 games as a rookie, only 4 starts. And then this year played in 4 games, and that was it. So I don't know if he was hurt. J.L. Skinner, the safety out of Boise State, he came out with a lot of fanfare. A lot of fans were very high on him. I thought he was an okay prospect. I wasn't as high on him as some folks. He's yet to start an NFL game, but he's appeared in 16. And then you've got Alex Forsythe, who has played 17 games as a pro all this year, 4 starts. So, again, these guys are who are very early in their careers. Then, of course, this year, Bo Nix, huge hit. Jonah Ellis, the Utah pass rusher, had 5 sacks. Looks like he's going to be a good player. Troy Franklin did some good things, 260 yards receiving. So, didn't light the world on fire, but had his moments. Chris Abrams-Drain, another guy who I really liked. Let's see, he appeared in 5 games. Audric Estime, the running back, had 300 yards rushing. Devon Vele, the Utah wide receiver, big dude, had 475 yards as a rookie. I think going in round 7, he had really good production upside. He's sort of trending in the right direction. So you've got a decent, not phenomenal, far from it, draft class. And really with the Broncos right now, you look at them and is it Patton that's kind of rebuilt them, or did Sean Payton show up and rescue all of them and save their jobs? Because things were not going well there at all. The Russell Wilson contract ended up being one of the worst, if not the worst, in NFL history. The single largest cap hit for an individual player in NFL history when they had to let him go. They hired an incompetent head coach. So there were definitely some bad moves that Denver made in his time as the assistant GM or, as pro personnel. But that's going to happen. Listen, with any executive, you got to be fair and say no one's just going to hit dingers. I know that's what people I say all the time. I think Madden has ruined what people understand to be a successful draft class. People want 5, 6, 7 starters. Otherwise, you suck and you're a terrible GM and all that. Let's see. Go through the comments now. See how people are feeling about this. Let's see. Johnny Jet in the house. John, how we doing? Says obviously hopes it's a good hire, which we all do. Let's see. Heard him give your spin on that Aaron Glenn. And what's the scoop with Aaron Rodgers? Is he going to be? Well, listen. I forget who it was the other day. One of Aaron Glenn's former teammates was on WFAN Sports Radio in New York, and he said that he believes Aaron Glenn's going to keep Aaron Rodgers if he was this is before Aaron Glenn was hired. Roman Obed, I think. No, I forget who it was. Who said that he believes Aaron Glenn will keep Aaron Rodgers. I like the Glenn hire. I think he's paid his dues. I think he's worked his way all the way up again from being a scout. The mentoring piece from Parcells, the mentoring piece from Sean Payton. And the fact he's a former, look, you love that. Every fan of a franchise, when you bring back a former great player, you're pumped that listen, when I still followed baseball before it fell off the cliff and became unwatchable, I was like, come on, I was a big Yankee fan. I was like, come on, bring Mattingly, make Mattingly your manager, which never happened. But you want to see your former greats come back on board and hopefully turn the franchise around. So, even just aside from the legacy thing, Aaron Glenn has done a lot to earn that job. And I think of all the candidates, he was the best candidate who was willing to come work for the Jets. Put it that way. I wanted an offensive guy. I wanted a Monken, a Kingsbury. Well, Kingsbury I wasn't as high on. But, Cohen, the more I was reading about these guys as the process was going on, but then you realize, hang on a minute, could it be just a mere coincidence that the top 4 or 5 offensive candidates aren't interviewing with the Jets? And then we had Antoine Staley come out and say, Kingsbury, how do you say, it takes 2 to tango, sort of implying Kingsbury wasn't interested in the job. Rich Cimini indicated that Cliff Kingsbury wasn't interested in the job. So the offensive guys, as much as we wanted an offensive guy, they didn't want to work. They didn't want to come here. Was it because of Aaron? Was it because of Woody? Was it because of the stink of the franchise? I don't know. But of the candidates that wanted to come here, I feel like Aaron Glenn was the best available. So I'm not sitting here predicting great things and saying he's going to be amazing. I'm just saying that I think getting him was the right move. Definitely preferred him to Brian Flores, who I thought was, when you read about the way he interacted with his players, I wouldn't want that guy. I wouldn't let the guy in my building. Forget about hiring him. It was terrible with Tua. He was terrible. But again, the flip side of that is he had a 7-game winning streak at the end of his tenure there. So it's like, okay, maybe he was not a nice guy. Maybe he treated some of his players like garbage and made things harder than they had to be. But they also pulled it together at the end. So I don't know. I a million times out of a million, I'm taking Aaron Glenn over Flores for that reason. And Lauren says the question was, is Mougey hired because of his time? He's spent some time with Aaron Glenn, or Mougey spent some time with Peyton, and Peyton loved Glenn. That could be a thing. That could be, if Aaron Glenn's calling around to the people he knows. I'm sure the Jets let him have some input on the GM thing, and maybe Aaron Glenn hears from Sean Payton, who says, "Hey, Aaron, this guy's up and comer. Like, go get him. Tell the Jets to bring this guy on board." Maybe, I don't know, but that's where the overlay is, that Mougey worked with Payton in Denver, and Payton is one of Aaron Glenn's biggest fans, and then they end up on the same staff. June the GM says, I never heard of any of these GMs, yet alone Mougey. I hope he's good. We all do. And as I've said, June, even if we had heard of him, even the candidates we were familiar with, we still don't know what they're doing. We're not in the building. Again, I understand the excitement and the wanting it to be the right move and finding ways to praise it. Fine, have at it. Go ahead. But let's not pretend we know what these guys, what they're going to do or what they have done in the past. Bob says all Woody's hires look good when they're hired. After they've been around for a while, they don't. Well, that's the thing, Bob. They look, and do the hires look good, or do us fans just want so badly for them to be good that we buy in without any evidence? And during that honeymoon period, the media doesn't really have anything to go off of, so they write mostly favorable stories. Or it's not even about writing favorable stories. They call around, they interview and speak to people who know these guys, and they print what they're told about them. Well, as I said the other day to somebody, when somebody said, "Oh, look at this quote about this GM," or I think it may have been Newmark, and somebody was like, "Look what this person said about this guy," and all the candidates they were bringing in, I would see these quotes about them, and I think, when's the last time you turned on the NFL Network, and Ian Rappaport was talking about a team hiring a GM, and he said, my sources tell me this guy's a complete moron. He's adult. They can't figure out how he got the job, and don't expect him to be around that long. Like, it doesn't happen. Everyone says nice things about everyone, and then the reporters report it, and then reality happens, and we comment on reality. So right now we're commenting on friendships and hypotheticals. So yeah, everything always looks good early on, with the exception of the Colts washout guy. That would have been a disaster from day one. Rich, lifelong fan, can't help myself not getting younger. Tell you what, Rich, as I say to people, enjoy your fellow Jets fans. Go to games, tailgate, laugh, create great memories, and don't expect any great memories to happen once you go in that building. It's just pure disappointment otherwise. They found a way to screw up the best roster this team's ever had, or the best roster, let's just say the best roster they've had in 20 years, from top to bottom. Some guys disappointed, but there are still they find a way to screw everything up. So I'm just like, be a fan. If you're a fan who's lucky enough to go to games, enjoy your fellow fans, and then go in and power through 3 hours of terrible football. Well, 1 hour of terrible football over 3 hours, and go home. Let's see. Lauren says she'd love to know why Dimitroff didn't make the cut. Yeah, I agree, Lauren. And I guess it could be them wanting the new head coach to be comfortable with the GM. And again, that overlay, did Aaron Glenn get some word from Peyton about bringing in a guy he was familiar with? Rich asks, any recent OC who've been let go interested? Bobby Slowick was let go today, just a few hours ago, I think. So Bobby Slowick, who some of us were saying maybe you bring him in, interview him for the head coaching job. I'd bring him in now to talk offense, but it sounds like Aaron Glenn has some guys he's already talking to, as you would expect. He was reportedly making calls before the Jets even announced him. Aaron Glenn had started assembling his coaching staff. So we'll see what transpires there. I know we're all, everybody's hoping that he brings in some names that we're familiar with that we can get excited about. Like if he brings in a Mark Brunell, I don't know how excited I can get about Mark Brunell. Again, another first-timer, another dude who's never done it. The Jets have become Woody has made the Jets a place where future coaches can cut their teeth and learn from their mistakes. Come here when you don't know what you're doing, make all your mistakes, and then move on and go somewhere else. And most of those guys fail too after they leave here, let's be honest. But this is like a proving ground. The Jets are like, hey, you want to show you belong, or you want to find out if you belong? Come to the Jets, and they'll let you compete against other NFL teams, and no experience required. Although, again, like I said, we have seen some names thrown around connected to the Aaron Glenn potential coaching staff. Some names on there of guys who may. Todd Haley's name's been thrown around. He's got tons of experience. He could be on the staff in an advisory role, not necessarily calling plays. So we'll see about that. Let's see what else we got in the chat. But let's see. Looks like a ton of comments came pouring in, so I missed them. But here we go. Hope for the best, of course, with Mougey. Guys not giving me much hope. Well, June, like, I mean, I'm not going to make stuff up. I don't know if you meant me or his draft record isn't giving you much hope. But again, that's Patton's draft record. For all we know, there could be 5 or 6 picks in there that Patton made where Mougey was like, oh, man, I wouldn't do that. I would go with this guy. Maybe he had – maybe they're worse. Maybe for every good pick Patton made, Mougey was sitting there banging the table for someone else who wasn't as good. And these are the things we don't know. So now we find out. We get to find out with the Jets if he can get it done. Let's see. That's a good point, Lauren. Get a laugh when he poses next to Aaron Glenn. Mougey is 6'6", Glenn's 5'9". Yeah. I actually saw someone send that a video, like a cartoon of like a giant sparring a midget. It said, when they disagree over a draft pick, this is what it's going to look like. So yeah, let's see what else we got. Nothing to laugh about concerning the Jets. Yeah, Ron, the Jets are a laughing stock. They have been for most of my time as a fan, and that's just comes with the territory. Every decade or so, they have a competitive year or two, and that's about it. Um, let's see. Martin brings up a good point. I haven't looked yet. I want to look at the. I've been focused more on who with the Jets can benefit from the Aaron Glenn hire. I think Braylon Allen, if Aaron Glenn brings in a coordinator and says, "Hey, I want you to do what we did in Detroit and feature both backs because both these guys can run." Braylon Allen could be one of the biggest beneficiaries. DJ Reed, interestingly enough, commented on the hire with like an enthusiastic endorsement on Twitter, which that kind of got my attention. Is DJ Reed willing to come back? Because listen, he wasn't great last year, but I I have a hard time. I understand we all love the idea. We all wish, every fan wishes that every player on their team was like Ray Lewis or like JJ Watt. And I don't mean just in terms of production. Of course, we want that, but energy. Like those are the two guys that stand out in my mind of like the epitome of like Lawrence Taylor. Guys that just 100 miles an hour on every play, no matter what. That's what makes those guys special. I think it's human nature for some of these guys when you know your season's over, like you play, but you don't have that hunger because you know if you win, it doesn't matter. Your coach was fired. You're pouting. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just the point I'm making here is I think there are some guys on this defense who probably weren't their hearts weren't in it. Once Salah was fired and they lost a few in a row and they knew their season was over. No. But I think you bring in Aaron Glenn, an energetic guy. You get this team playing well. That means guys start playing harder because there's something to play for because you may actually win some football games. It's just a very long way of saying I would have no problem with bringing DJ Reed back. It would be tough because he won't be cheap, and we know we got the contracts coming. The Aaron Rodgers situation is going to impact everything. That's the biggest domino that has to fall. Let's see. With Rodgers, let's see who Glenn hires as OC. If he hires an OC who has the same lame ass 90s West Coast, I don't see that happening. After what Aaron Glenn just had in Detroit with Ben Johnson, I think it's going to be more forward thinking. I think it's going to be he's going to pluck somebody away from a team that doesn't run something similar to that. Stack says he stole JFM from us for a bag of peanuts. Yeah, again, that's the patent. I mean, again, Mougey advised or what he thought. But yeah, I hated that trade the second it was announced. That I was like, you just gave John Franklin Myers away for pennies. And Jets fans that have spent years trashing him, oh, he doesn't get sacks. I was like, a lot of you guys are about to find out how good JFM was. And they missed him terribly on that D line. That was a huge loss. June, the GM, says, wow, really weak draft classes compared to Joe D. This hire is exciting. This hire is not exciting. I'm extremely skeptical, to be honest, and I'm normally optimistic. I'm not going to blame you for that, June. Like I said, I'm with all the hires. I'm like, okay, show me, like, do your job. Let's watch you do your thing. I'm not going to get overly excited, and I'm not going to get down because I don't know who he was picking, and we don't know what Aaron Glenn coach team looks like. So it's all unknown. Literally, that's all it boils down to right now. And everybody hates the unknown. Nobody likes having no idea in any situation. I remember years ago as a kid hearing that, and that was like it really stuck with me. They said, I was listening to like an economist on the news, and he was like, the worst thing you can have with the stock market is uncertainty. Bad, like terrible news, bad news is better than uncertainty because when people are uncertain, they panic. If things are going bad, you can see the bottom and say, well, all right, well, it can only get so much worse, and then we'll bounce back. Uncertainty, that's not just economics. That's with so many things in life. How many people do you know that freak out and lose their mind over something that they really don't even have an answer to? They don't when you don't know what's going on, and that's where Jets fans are right now. We don't know what's going to happen. We know we've hired a coach who a lot of people are high on, and we now know they've hired a GM who was part of a team that didn't have a fantastic draft record, but did have some hits. So as I said, now we sit and wait. I hope we hire a president of operations. That's been floated around by a couple people. I think everyone I don't know anyone who wouldn't agree with that. I guess since it's something Woody's never done, I'm just like, I don't expect him to, but I would like him to. I think, did Samini mention Spielman? Because I with the start of this process, I love the idea of Spielman. I would have liked him as the GM. I like him a lot. I would love for them to keep him on in some capacity. Give him the job his brother has in Detroit, something like that. But I don't know. I don't know that Woody's going to do that. Let's see. June, not excited at all. And again, I will not. I can't fault anyone. If you're excited, that's great. Your prerogative. If you're looking at this draft record and going, then I don't blame you for that either. If you think this guy wanted Hackett, we got another Hackett. We got another Nate Hackett fan in the house. I understand that's probably the scariest thing of all the things I've seen browsing through, flipping through Twitter. Yeah, that's it's a little bit concerning. It is. So let's see. June says he hopes he didn't co-sign with the draft classes. Well, he would have to some degree, because of course he was the assistant GM. That was Joe Douglas's role in Philly. When you're the general manager's right hand man, you're gonna have some say. But again, it's knowing what was his say. Which picks did he endorse that were made, and which picks did he endorse that weren't made, and how did those guys turn out? Info we won't get. Lauren says, what do I think of the report that Westhoff will be acting as an advisor? I did see that health-wise, it seems Mike Westhoff isn't really ready to come back and patrol the sidelines as a special teams coach. But if you're using him as an advisor, if you're sort of lending him your ear to let him throw you some names of potential replacements for Boyer, who looks to be heading out. He's interviewing for the job in San Fran with Saleh, or where Saleh has landed. So yeah, using Westhoff as an advisor, I think that's a really good move. Let's see, June. I'm sure Glenn will have a huge say in that. Absolutely. I mean, coaches and GMs, you got to work together. Ultimately, the GM makes the picks, but it really should be the coach saying, here's what I need. And these are the, in certain spots, this is the guy I think can do that. And if the GM, the GM likes the player and the coach wants him and he feels a need, then go get him. Let's see. Bubba Jet says, hearing something. I don't know what that word is. I don't know what you meant to type there. Conflicting reports in regards to the Jets GM. Not sure what the reports mean about conflicting reports. Do you mean that whether or not he's going to be hired? And I said at the top, this is not confirmed, guys. This is not, the team has not announced this. This is Josina Anderson, but others, Rich Cimini, have kind of piggybacked on it and commented. So unless something has started to transpire since we went live, that are sort of contradicting that report, then I totally get it. Let's see. Good point. It seems like. Okay, yeah. So I figured Dylan would have something for me. Dylan, who's not able to hop on right now, says, "Good point. It isn't." Yeah. And like I said, if you're just tuning in, you will see I said at the very top, this is not yet confirmed by the team. But there are reports that the Jets have agreed. So that's we're going to sort of go with the premise that Josina Anderson's report is correct. If it's wrong, we're going to come on and we're going to talk about whoever it turns out to be. But like I said, Josina Anderson is one of those folks that nobody gets the scoops like Rap Sheet and Shefty do, but she nails a ton of stuff. I'd be surprised if she went out this far on a limb to say that he was getting the job if he had, in fact, not gotten the job. Wouldn't be the first time she was wrong. So let's see. I hope Ulbrich or Saleh won't try and get Sherwood. He needs to stay. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one, isn't it, Melvin? I think both guys. I think Ulbrich and Saleh will try to poach some Jets player. I'm sure Solomon Thomas going to head back to San Francisco. Robert Saleh, for whatever reason, thinks he is a guy you must have on your defense. That's to each his own. Let's see. Be good to see a mix of experience and promise on the coaching team. Like you mentioned, good experienced consultants out there. Yeah, that would be nice to have, wouldn't it, Martin? That's Martin in the chat. Let's see. Kyle says, Jesus Christ loves me. That's good to hear. Jimmy's, or maybe he didn't mean me specifically. He probably meant everyone. That was probably Kyle coming in to give us a Jesus update. We can give Salah, Clemens, Gibson, and the bozo he brought from San Fran. Yeah, they're some not so great players that Salah signed off on. You want to send Kinlaw back? I don't think San Fran would want him back. Kuka Lake, the Jets fan, he pushed for O'Connell over Hackett. Yeah, that's what I said earlier. Touched on that. The Twitterverse seems to say he endorsed Hackett, but he endorsed O'Connell more so, which is good. It's good. It's good and bad, right? Like, hey, he liked O'Connell, great, but he liked Hackett too. And again, O'Connell, was it genuinely because of what he knew of him, or was it because they were college roommates and college teammates? That could be just a friend looking out for a friend. So we'll see. What else we got here? Solly's a culture guy, high quality human who can help the locker room. Things aren't go. That Brian, I do agree with, and that's sort of and I do think it's important to have those guys. I don't disagree with Solomon Thomas. I would like to see the culture guy be a bit more productive, especially when you're playing on the defensive interior and you're getting gashed every week in the run game. That doesn't help. Kinlaw, he's one of those guys. Listen, he was a first round pick for a reason. Like there were times, there were flashes where you're like, oh, I see it. I get why that guy was a first rounder. But then there would be times where you're like, is that guy still on the team? Did he play this week? You can't have that. You can't have that level of inconsistency. Dominant few reps and then dumb penalties, and then you just disappear for 2-3 weeks. Ryu Ken says same exact thing I've been saying. He says he's doesn't care about the head coach and GM taking the wait and see approach. Hot candidates suck all the time, and low key coaches become great. Exactly. Look at and not that he's been great, but he won a Super Bowl, and if God forbid we could ever get that with the Jets, look at what was being said about Doug Peterson when the Eagles hired him. Like, they were getting blasted. This guy is old and he's never had a job for a reason, and blah 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 blah. That worked out in terms of they won a Super Bowl, so I don't care if he never won another game after that. They got them a damn Super Bowl. For any Jets fan who's under the age of 90, you've never seen it. So get us one, and whatever happens after that, you live with it. JE says we need an experienced offensive coordinator with a modern playbook. Defensive coordinator as a head coach. Aaron Glenn is another Mike Singletary, in my opinion. Wanted Gruden or Carroll. So a few things there. Yes, wholly agree. Get an experienced play caller would be a nice idea, but it looks like they are looking at some less experienced guys. Defensive coordinator, Steve Wilks is the name that's being rumored out there. Aaron Glenn's another Mike Singletary. I don't know about that. I mean, Singletary was more because, he was even a generation older than Aaron Glenn. He was more old school. I think Aaron Glenn will do a better job of relating to players. And don't get me wrong, I love Mike Singletary. I love when he called out, Davis, the tight end, and basically had him walk off the field. He said, I'd rather play with 10 guys and with 11 with one of them that ain't trying, and told him he can go home. That was a boss move. I love that. Didn't work out, but we'll see. As far as John Gruden, it's been let's put aside the controversy part, right? Let's even putting aside the emails and the lawsuits and the whatever. It's been a long time since he was good. And I love Gruden. Got to meet him one time at an event, and he was cool as hell. He's funny. He's entertaining. I like him on TV. I lived in the Tampa Bay area when he was with the Bucs and won that Super Bowl. So I got to see, daily coverage of him and that team, and I loved him. He was one of my favorites. But it's been a long time since he was good. Pete Carroll, I don't know if he's got that. I don't know. And you know what? It's no point in talking about it, is there? Because he's the Carroll's or the Jets have their head coach. So let's see. Martin says, last thing, if Woody lets the managers manage and the coaches coach, then we have half a chance to get. Well, listen, yeah, we don't need Woody making the personnel decisions, right? What were the two moves that the reports claimed he made? Tyron Smith and Mike Williams, two of the worst moves of the offseason. And those were reportedly Woody-driven moves, like get me these guys. And both those moves were disastrous. Woody needs to keep away from the war room. It'd be nice, but look, Woody's going to be in there. His kids are going to be in there. How much input they're going to have, I don't know. That they're not going to show you that on the One Jets Drive episodes, right? You're going to see the clips of the GM and the head coach working in unison. You're not going to see between picks if not when, but if Woody or Brick or whoever is in somebody's ear telling them what to do. So we'll just, we'll have to see what happens there. Gruden won a Super Bowl. Well, like I said, Lauren, I lived in that area at that time. Gruden won a Super Bowl. They needed Gruden to win that Super Bowl because Tony Dungy he would not get away from 3 yards in a cloud of dust. He just wanted to pound the ball all day with Mike Allstott and, let Warwick Dunn run it. And they were a fun, entertaining team. But Tony Dungy tried to win every game 6-3. That, I'll tell you what, Bucs fans have 2 Super Bowls in my lifetime. Congrats to them. That Bucs defense, I watched almost every game because I lived in that area. So that was the local game. I would go to the bar to watch the Jets. The Bucs would inevitably be on the biggest TV in the bar. So you'd glance up at that during the commercials. That defense, Warren Sapp, John Lynch, Derek Brooks, Rondé Barber, Booger McFarland, that they should have won 3 Super Bowls. But Tony Dungy wouldn't. He would try to beat everyone 6-3. So they brought in Gruden and said, dude, can you get us like 17 points a week and we'll win a damn Super Bowl? And yeah, Brad Johnson threw 22 touchdowns and the Bucs won the Super Bowl. And then Dungy goes to the Colts and they're like, you just run the defense. We have Peyton Manning. We have Tom Moore. They're the offense. Don't go near them. So Dungy took care of the defense while Moore and Manning ran the offense and won a Super Bowl. So Dungy wanted to beat everybody 6-3. So they needed Gruden to come in there and install an offense that would score points and win, and that's what he did. Slowick is out. Yeah, I mentioned that a few minutes ago, Brian. If you're going to go out and try to get an OC, and Slowick is a guy that some people thought the Jets should bring in as a head coach. Now he's out there as a coordinator. He's had some good success in Houston. I would have no problem with that at all. Woody also got Devontae. Well, yeah, that's Woody demanded. Woody told the Jets to give up what needed to be given up to get Devontae. It was already rumored that the Jets were interested. And I think the Jets were just trying to wait the Raiders out and not give up a premium pick. And it was Woody who came in and said, give them the premium pick. So that's what they did. And now that's why they don't have a pick in the top of the 3rd round. So yeah, they dropped their 3rd rounder rather, which would have been a top, that'd be 36, that'd be top 70 pick. But now that next pick is in the 90s, thanks to the Joe Douglas trade that with whoever it was, Detroit. They traded a 4 for a 3. Connor's in the chat. How we doing, Connor? Haven't seen your Dylan episode. I think he did your show the other day. I got to try to check that out. As Brian Glick says, Gruden's going to have leadership questions 100%. Like I said, even if we put that aside, which no team is going to, because that's controversial stuff, that's locker room stuff, teams are going to consider it. But even if you put it aside, it's been a very long time since Gruden had himself a good season. He was not doing well with the Raiders before all that happened. So let's see. We'll see about that. Enjoying the offseason as a Jets fan. Yeah, says Brian. And that's what I'm tired of. I'm kind of tired of, the last few years, people say it's not every year, but the last few years the Jets have made enough big moves in the offseason. And even this past offseason, there wasn't a big one, but the big one was Aaron Rodgers is coming back. So there's always all these reasons for optimism that just never, they don't pan out. So, let's see. Aaron says, y'all had so many stars on your team. What a surprise, another losing season. My hometown Steelers are having some issues, but I tell myself it could be worse. I could be a Jets fan. And listen, Aaron, I tell myself it could be worse. I could be a Browns fan. Like, you always look for that, even though the Browns are probably They had some hope there when they traded for Deshaun and when they had, Baker had a good year a couple of years ago. You felt like, oh, the Browns are turning it around. And they didn't. And now they have one of the worst situations in the NFL with that money they owe him, with the money they owe Deshaun. But hey, credit to the Steelers, man. Steelers took a lot of players I liked. Peyton Wilson, liked him a lot. Coming out, I think he had a pretty good year for you guys. The Steelers as an organization have done it well for so long. You got to respect them. And there's not a natural rivalry there with the Jets, so it's easier to do. Wild Wave says, do you think we trade Devontae Adams? I think it's all going to come down to Aaron. If Aaron stays, Devontae stays. If Aaron goes, Devontae goes. It's that simple. Although I guess with the cap, I guess it wouldn't make sense to me. Like, I guess you can say, well, you can keep Aaron and trade Devontae. Aside from it, getting under Aaron's skin, you want him. He played well last year. A little bit of a slow start, but when he got the targets, he played really well. You would want a Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams tandem, but would Garrett Wilson want that? That's going to be a question. That's going to be a question for the next GM, whenever it's confirmed. If it's confirmed, do you get to work right away on getting Garrett Wilson done? Or do you honor any trade requests or let his contract, have him play another year? We'll see about that. That's but I think Devontae Adams, in my opinion, is tied to Rodgers. If this regime wants to keep Rodgers, he'll stay, and Devontae will stay. This is the point about this year that Brian Glick just made. The higher the expectations, the worse you feel when it doesn't work out. That's what made this season so bad. There were people saying this year is as bad as it gets. Football-wise, no, it's not. As bad as it gets, that was Adam Gase and year one of Joe Douglas, which was essentially still Adam Gase and Mike McCagnon's team. Those 2 years, the Jets were outscored by 1 million points. That was the worst football we've seen. That was Rich Kotite level football. But this year hurt more because of the expectations. By the way, be sure to give me a follow if you can at JNRadio_Glenn. And be sure to check out what we have going on at the forums on JetNation.com, most active Jets message board on the web. I'm sure there's plenty going on in there right now. That's probably where I'll be heading right after this. Jets always win the offseason and well, it's funny. Who did I hear the other day? I think it was, I've talked about Scott Mason, play like a Jet. He's been doing deep dives on the coaching candidates. He did a Vance Joseph one the other day, and the Broncos writer he had on talked about how when things were falling apart under Vance Joseph, every week you just heard about what a great week of practice it was. And I was like, oh, maybe the Jets aren't the defending great week of practice champions. Maybe it's the Broncos. Or maybe it was the Broncos back then. Kind of started with Rex, and it's carried on now for years that it's always a great week of practice. Year doesn't want Rodgers back, but who's better? That is the point with Aaron Rodgers. I've been saying it for a couple of months now. On the one hand, you want Aaron Rodgers gone? I get it. I'm not, he's not the same guy he was. However, as Year points out, and as I brought this up months ago, just a couple days ago on the message boards at Jet Nation, someone said this very same thing that Year said, and that I've been saying. Who you turning to if Aaron Rodgers goes? Tyrod Taylor, who hasn't played more than 6 games in about 7 years? He's a backup who gets hurt every time he steps on the field. And I like the guy. As I've said many times, when he left Buffalo and the Jets, because the Jets never have a damn quarterback, I was like, go get Tyrod Taylor. He can win you some games. Jets had a good defense back then. Sound familiar? I'm like, with this defense and Tyrod Taylor, you can make the playoffs. So I like Tyrod. But the injuries have become such a thing that you can't ignore it anymore. So who are you going to? And Yair says, don't tell me Justin Fields. Kind of feel the same way. Justin Fields did some good things this year, and I will not pretend that I watched a bunch of him, but I watched a couple of his games, and it felt an awful lot like when Zach Wilson was winning, when Zach Wilson strung a few wins together, and he wasn't really doing much. But Fields better than Zach to this point, obviously. That was I'll take that L. Neither one of them are very good, but Fields is the better player. Let's see. Pitt doesn't lose games on self-inflicted wounds. Yeah, well, Jets have been doing that forever. That's kind of the Jets' calling card. They don't need to trade him. I think there's an opt-out. I don't know if there's an opt. I think I could be mistaken here, Lauren, but I think what Adams did, he restructured the deal, but all he did was he wouldn't reduce his enormous payday next year. So the opt-out essentially became, if you want to keep me, you better really want to keep me because I'm not taking a pay cut and I'm going to count for a ton against your cap. And so really the only time it makes sense to do that is if it's me and Aaron. If you're starting over with a new quarterback, then the Jets they would have to let him go. And I could be wrong on that, but I recall at the time, the reporting being Adams restructured the first year, but the big payday stay after that, and that is so he can sort of say, I'm not taking a pay cut, so if Aaron's gone, you may as well let me go. Again, I could be wrong about that, but that's the way I recall it. First thing the Jets need to do is get rid of Aaron Rodgers. This is not an unpopular take, Aaron, but I will say to you, as I just said in the comments a minute ago, who is your quarterback next year? And listen, this comes down to expectations. What are you hoping for next year? If I don't know if some fans are happy to say, you know what, let's start over at quarterback. Let's miss the playoffs for the next 3-4 years and start another rebuild. I don't know how many fans feel that way, but if you're among those fans who are like, I'm tired of this playoff drought, we have an O-line in place, we have a great running back, we have some great receivers, we have some great defenders, let's fill in the pieces and make the playoffs. If you're of that mindset, who are you going with when you get rid of Aaron Rodgers? So yes, if you're willing to throw away the next couple of years, then I understand why you're willing to get rid of Aaron Rodgers. If you're hoping to compete, why are you getting rid of Aaron Rodgers? So that's my whole thing is I'm not going to argue with people who want to get rid of him, but if you want to get rid of him, acknowledge the fact that you're okay with not making the playoffs again for the next 2 to 3 years. Jets offseason news. Y'all must enjoy the pain. It's not so much enjoy, Larry. I'm numb to it. I don't know. I can't speak for everybody. But that's so. And Larry says the same thing. Who's QB1 if not Rodgers? Someone needs to tell Rodgers he needs to get high after the game, not pregame. I don't know when he engages in that stuff, to be honest. Wasn't planning on going this long, but it's a nice conversation here. Everybody's listen. It's big news. I'm refreshing Twitter every now and then to see if the Jets make this official and make him the GM, and at which point, hopefully, maybe Dylan can hop on with us here if they make this move. But I'm not seeing it. Yeah, I'm not seeing it on here. Let's see. Oh, here's some news from Aaron Wilson. I don't know if it's been reported that he's a target. But Aaron Wilson saying the leading candidate for the Jets offensive coordinator job is Rams tight ends coach Nick Caley, per multiple sources. So we'll see what happens. Listen, I said earlier, right? I would imagine when Aaron Glenn goes out and gets his coordinator, it's going to be someone from a more modern offense. It's not going to be another version of Nate Hackett's offense. And well, I mean, it's Nate and Aaron's, I suppose. But I'm not going to do that thing where I pretend to have this great in-depth knowledge of the Rams tight ends coach. I 1,000,000% guarantee you there are going to be thousands of people who 48 to 72 hours ago had never heard that man's name before. They did not know he was a member of the human race. And today they're like, oh, he's the guy. You got to get that dude. He's going to be so awesome. Right. Okay. Because you read his name in a tweet and he worked for Sean McVay. So he must be awesome, which he might be. But all we would know is that he would be another first timer having to prove himself. Let's see. Aaron hops in again. Not Aaron Glenn, not Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Derrick. Says, I'm going to be honest, one of the first games I watched the Jets play, they won. Don't remember which game, but said to myself, they look like a serious Super Bowl contender. I'd like to know what year that was. I don't know if you mean this year, Aaron, but Yeah, not a lot of goodness this year. Okay, referring to this season. Yeah, well, listen, if that team, if they'd played up to expectations, there was no shortage of people saying they can make a deep playoff run. So, uh, Mac Jones, oh Jesus, no way. That guy, that dude. He reminds, if you were a fan of the NFL in the late 80s, early 90s, whenever it was, the Patriots had a quarterback named Scott Zolak, and that's who Mac Jones reminds me of. That dude will hand the ball off 13 times in a row, throw one or two screen passes, and celebrate a touchdown like he just led John Elway's The Drive in the playoffs. It's like, dude, you were an ornament. You were a pitching machine. You took the snap, you turned around, you handed it off. Let's settle down with the backflips on the touchdown, on the 1-yard touchdown run on the drive where every single dude on the offense worked while you just kind of stood there as a spectator. That was Zolak. Zolak was a spectator. Mac Jones, spectator. And listen, there's not a better spectator job in the NFL. Don't get me wrong. You made it to the NFL. You're one of the best athletes in the world. I'm not saying that's not the case. I'm just saying that you can be one of the best athletes in the world and still be one of the worst athletes in the league, and that's kind of where those guys are, or that's where Zolak was and where Mac Jones is. But he still thrashed the Jets. Went up and down the field on them a few times, if I'm not mistaken. Lawrence says, hypothetical, we hired a great OC, modern offense, Rodgers, Odavules? I'm going to have to try that word again. I admit, took me a while to realize Aaron will be the best we'll get, but it is what I said at the start of the process, I said, I want offense. If it's going to be defense, Aaron Glenn is my choice number one. And as it became clearer and clearer that none of the offensive guys wanted to come here, it was like that leaves Aaron Glenn as choice number one. So yeah, of those willing to take the job, Aaron Glenn was my top choice. So he got it. And I'm very happy for him. Let's draft a QB and sit him. You have to. I imagine. Listen, we'll be throwing names out in the coming weeks. Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe. There's going to be some day two guys who will be in the mix to get drafted and sit with Jordan Travis behind probably Aaron Rodgers and try to learn. Memorabilia says ayahuasca is expensive. I'll take your word for it. No idea. Aaron says Justin Fields is staying with Pittsburgh. I could see that happening. It would make sense, really. Let's see. Fields staying in Pitt. Tank and load up on picks again. Like you have a very. How many times have we said that? Everybody says in the NFL, it all starts up front. Like especially, offense and defense, really. But on offense, you've got to have an O-line. The Jets have a very good young group of O-linemen. We gonna tank a couple years and let them get to free agency, and then you don't have an O-line again, and you're ready to contend, and Tippmann is a free agent, and AVT is maybe gone by then, and you've only got one more year of Olu before he's a free agent. I say try to win something now. I'm not, and it's silly to say it because I know they're not going to win. They're not going to win anything ever, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't be trying. And when you have a good O-line in place, which they do, and if you bring Morgan Moses back and use a top 100 pick on a right tackle, the O-line is set, man. Aaron Rodgers, let's be honest, Aaron Rodgers played much better in the second half and down the stretch when the O-line got their act together. Did he look like the Aaron Rodgers of old? Certainly not. But did he look a lot closer to it than he did earlier in the year? Hell yeah. The way he was running around and moving around in the pocket and outside the pocket late in the season, it's like, oh, looks like the Achilles is finally fully healed. Because now he's doing the things he wasn't able to do for most of the season. That's what makes the Rodgers thing intriguing. The fact that the mobility improved dramatically and the production improved significantly late in the year. So if he's going to go into next year playing at that level and you've got that O-line, that's not the time to tear it down. Who knows when they'll have another. And again, I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers is the old Aaron Rodgers. But when is the next time you're going to have a quarterback who can play competent football? They've had that like twice in the last 20, 30 years outside of Rodgers. You had a good year from Vinny. You had a good year from Chad. 1 year Sanchez wasn't the worst player on the field every week. I don't know if how that constitutes as praise because Sanchez was often pretty bad. Yeah, we're not including him in that conversation. They had a good year from Vinny. They had a good year from Chad. That's been it. I'm probably forgetting someone because I'm getting old, but these things happen. Problem is the money. Well, I've raised that point before. Larry Sports Talk. I think that there'll have to be a renegotiation. I actually posted an article about the potential hire and said that one of his biggest decisions is going to be Aaron Rodgers. And if Rodgers is going to stay, there's going to have to be a pay cut. But Rodgers has already taken a $35 million pay cut. However, if Aaron Rodgers wants to stay in the league, which he apparently does, I don't know how many suitors he's going to have. So his only choice might be stay here with a pay cut. And he's got enough money, and I'm not counting someone's money or whatever. But I'm just saying, he's got enough money that he can afford to play for league minimum. Let's be honest. The guy's made, probably a couple $100 million between salary and endorsements in his career. I think he can get by, but we'll see. We'll see what he does. We'll see what the Jets ask, and we'll see if he's willing to do it. Bubba Jet says, perfect scenario is Rodgers is horrible next year. And we don't have to worry about signing someone else. It'll serve that really bad year. Trade down and well, the thing is, if he really sucks next year, that's the problem with bringing Rodgers back this year without a restructure. And that's why I think he will restructure. If the Jets want Rodgers back, they have to realize that, or he has to realize it, they can't afford that $62 million cap hit that comes after this season. If he plays this year and then gets cut, the cap hit is $62 million. That's not feasible. So they'll have to rework that somehow if he wants to hang around. Otherwise, you got to let him go this year, take the $49 million cap hit, and move on with your life. Let's see what else we got here. If we're lucky, okay. So Bubba Jet saying, let Rodgers play poorly this year and draft a quarterback. I mean, that is what if Rodgers did stink it up this year, that's the route you would have to go. You would have to take a quarterback. I mean, you're probably taking one next year anyway, but it's a matter of are you taking one in the top 10 or are you taking one in the bottom 15? Let's see. Okay. They need to land an OC ASAP. Again, Slowick is an interesting candidate. You now have an experienced guy who's had recent success. Todd Haley's been mentioned. Like I said, Mark Brunell has been mentioned. Mark Brunell has never done it before. He may get that job in Detroit. He may want to stay there. But he may want to come to New York. So we'll see what Aaron Glenn, who he pursues. I think they're going to have, I think somebody like Haley will come along. I think they're going to want to bring an experienced voice into the room, which is really, I love that idea because, I had said previously, the reason I wanted an offensive head coach, I wanted a voice in that room, in that quarterback room, in those offensive meetings when the quarterback is struggling, whoever they do draft, I fully expect them to take one. I wanted someone in that room to be able to say, excuse me, I wanted someone to be able to say, I've done this before. I've been here before. Here's how we handled it with this team, blah, 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 blah. Todd Haley brings that. And hopefully they're looking at a few different guys who have been there. And then that sort of alleviates that concern that I had with that gives you that voice in the room who's done it and been there before. Because my concern was you hire Aaron Glenn, he hires a first-time offensive coordinator, and that's the end of it. If it's going to be Aaron Glenn with a first-time coordinator and then a veteran coordinator in that guy's ear, fantastic. And look, you don't want people looking over their shoulder too much, but it also gives you that option of like, hey, if this first-time coordinator, if he's choking away games, you have a veteran to lean on and say, hey, man, listen, young guy, like you're still here and we're going to work with you, but the veteran guy's taking over for the next 5 weeks because you're a disaster right now. You hope that doesn't happen, but it's nice to have somebody to fall back on who's, not a Todd Downing type. And let's not knock Downing. Downing, I think, did an admirable job, all things considered, this year with everything that went wrong. Brian Glick says, number one thing to do is start locking up our young core. It's also the number 2, number 3 thing the GM must do. And that was, again, as I just said, the article I just wrote, I talked about the need to get Rodgers, a decision on Rodgers and a pay cut if he's going to stay. And then the next point I made was you've got to do that. Or it was really the question I asked. what do you do with, do you get Sauce locked up now? Do you get Garrett locked up now? Do you get Brees locked up now? Do you trade anyone who you don't think you're going to lock up long term? Those are important questions. Let's see. Any idea who the assistant GM might be? I'll tell you what. I hope it's Phil Savage. Phil Savage, experienced guy. He's been with the Jets for a few years now, ran the Senior Bowl, and he's been like the Jets are meeting with prospects now. Phil Savage is still overseeing the whole thing. He's being a good soldier. He's got experience. Honestly, if they're going to keep, if they're going to have an assistant GM, let it be him. I think he's earned it. I think he's earned it with this team. Brian Glick fits one good. A good year. So I think that's about right. The Jets get about one good year of quarterback play every 10 years. We had Vinny, and then you had Chad, and then you had Fitz. I knew there was that's why I said I think I'm forgetting someone. And Fitz was great that year. That was fun. Let's see. Aaron, I guess that's a joke. The Jets will grab Jordan Travis, wrong year. Is this going to be another Salah LaFleur deal? We'll see. We'll see about that. I don't know. Eddie says bringing back Rodgers is a no-brainer. Draft either McCord, Leonard, or Howard in the third and let him sit with Travis and learn. Agree on McCord and Howard. Leonard, I'm not sure he's a quarterback. That dude might be a tight end or a running back. He as a thrower, he doesn't strike me as an NFL guy other than a third stringer type. But as an athlete, I would look at him in some other spots. I kind of feel the same way about him that I did with Tebow. Like Tebow, if Tebow had been a bit more humble and been willing to move to tight end, I think he might have had himself an NFL career. But he had too much pride and, refused to play in the Arena League because he had too much pride and refused to switch positions. I think he did late. I think with Jacksonville, he worked at fullback when they brought him in with Urban Meyer, but I think that was too late. That was like 7, 8, 9 years, however many years after he'd been drafted. So the Tebow thing, I think he hurt himself by having too much pride. And that's how Riley Leonard strikes me as a guy. I watch him and I'm like, athlete, football player, sure. Quarterback, not so sure. McCord had a really good year for Syracuse. I thought he played well. Will Howard, who I liked, we talked about him the other day on our show. I watched him a fair bit at K-State last year because they had some prospects. They had Cooper Beebe and Ben Sinnott, some guys that I really liked, who I watched a fair bit of. And I thought it's funny with Howard. I didn't pay as much attention to him this year just because his first couple games, I don't think he played that well. And I felt like I knew enough about him from his K-State days, and I thought he'd be a mid-round pick. But then he had a really good year and obviously a great college football playoff. So how much did that help his stock? Is he a guy the Jets could look at as a mid-rounder? We'll have to wait and see. But they're going to take somebody. Like I like Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart runs well enough. He's not a great runner, but really love the deep ball accuracy, the ball placement, the way he leads guys. I mean, leads him with, the way he throws the ball and he leads his receivers. Doesn't have a howitzer of an arm. He's not gonna win the any skills competitions for deep ball in terms of velocity and getting the ball there quickly. But he gets it. But that's not to say he can't get it there. I'm just saying he doesn't have the video game arm that so many people seem to covet. Howard's a big dude. Yeah, Howard is a big guy. And yeah, I like both those guys. There's a few quarterbacks who I like developmental. Curtis Rourke, liked him at Ohio last year, and then he had a really good year at Indiana this season. Older guy, but maybe that'll be beneficial. But Darnold and Zach Wilson, didn't work out so well. Thinking, oh look, we got this great young guy that they can mold, and turned out to be complete disasters. So we will stay on top of this. If this becomes official, we will hop on again. I would imagine myself and Dylan. Give me a follow, like I said, at JNRadio_Glenn on Twitter. You can follow my co-host Dylan Terman at D Terman. and Chris Schubert at Chris Schubert on Twitter. We will all hopefully all be live Thursday. But again, if a hire is made tonight, if it's made official, I will hop on. Dylan will join me, and Chris, if he is available, will join me as well. Don't see any other questions in the chat at the moment, so we will step away for now. Thanks so much for hopping on, and thanks so much for jumping in. A lot of good questions, a lot of good comments, some food for thought with some of this stuff. Eddie says he missed the beginning. Am I happy with the GM or the potential GM in Mougey? So what I said, Eddie, I'm not gonna get too high or too low about it. There are some things you hear that are scary. That he liked Nate Hackett. Was he a part of the Russell Wilson trade and compensation? Because that was insane. But they've done some good things in the draft. Not great, but good. And we don't know no matter who they hired. I took the same position from when the search started. I'm not going to get too high or too low because we're not in that room. We don't know who he endorsed in terms of players on draft day. We don't know which players he loved that bombed. We don't know which players he hated that played well. We just know that he was a big voice in the room when they made some decisions, and they found some good players. Is it a great draft record? No. Is it terrible? No. But it's not solely his, and it's less his than it is Patton, who was the guy actually making the picks. And now we will see how he does when he is the guy actually making the picks. Have a good one, Jets fans. Might see you in a couple hours. Who knows? Take care.